Gentlemen, the previous time you were intimate or attempted to be, did you observe the difference? Not merely in your capacity to perform, but in the real physical size prior to anything even beginning. Perhaps you positioned yourself before the mirror and considered, this isn't what I recall. This isn't the way it used to appear. Here's what's truly occurring. The tissue enabling expansion is actually shrinking on a cellular level. It's termed corpora fibrosis, and following 60, it speeds up. The blood vessels supplying that tissue, they're constricting some by up to 40% in comparison to when you were in your 30s. But here's the aspect no one informs you. What you're observing in the mirror at this moment, that reduced appearance, even in a relaxed state, that's not permanent reduction. That's not your new standard. That's a limitation. That's your tissue residing in a persistently underinflated condition because the blood flow is restricted. And today I'm going to demonstrate how a $2 pantry item likely positioned right beside the underinflation problem. Explained. Flour at this moment reverses the vascular constriction that's robbing your size. But prior to reaching the full protocol, I need you to grasp what's genuinely happening within your body. Because if you're similar to most men I collaborate with, you've begun to accept that this is simply how things stand now, that your body has attained some permanent condition of decline. Consider your arteries like garden hoses supplying water across your body. For years, those hoses functioned flawlessly. But decades of inflammation, inadequate diet, stress, and natural aging have produced what I refer to as kinks in those hoses. When the water pressure decreases, the hose appears smaller and seems weaker. But the hose itself hasn't reduced. It's the pressure that's altered. At this moment, your blood vessels are those kinked hoses and the tissue in your erectile chambers. It's anticipating the pressure to come back so it can expand to its complete capacity once more. Let me outline what this limitation feels like in your everyday life. Inform me if any of this signs men ignore every day resonates painfully familiar. You awaken in the morning and there's no erection. Perhaps you experience one sporadically, but it's softer than it once was, and it diminishes rapidly sometimes before you even rise from bed. You're in an intimate situation with your partner. You're mentally involved. The desire exists. You wish to perform, but your body requires 5 minutes, 10 minutes to respond. Or occasionally it doesn't fully engage whatsoever. You attain partial firmness, but not the firmness you recollect, not the confidence you previously possessed. It seems like you're operating with 60%, perhaps 70% of what you formerly experienced. And when you glance down in the shower or while you're dressing, you observe it appears smaller than it used to. Even when relaxed, not drastically smaller, but noticeably perhaps half an inch, perhaps more. That's not shrinkage. Let me be completely clear on this. That's your why. This is not permanent shrinkage. Tissue residing in a persistently underinflated condition because the blood flow is constrained, the tissue is present, the capacity is present, but the circulation isn't accessing it correctly. And here's what renders this so frustrating. You've likely already experimented with things, supplements, perhaps even medications, and you achieved some enhancement. But it leveled off or the outcomes became exasperatingly inconsistent. Some days it functions, other days identical dose, identical circumstances, scarcely anything. That inconsistency generates anxiety. You begin questioning if it's psychological. You introduce mental pressure, and that exacerbates everything. I'm Barbara O'Neill, and I've served as a practicing urologist for more than a decade, specializing in men's sexual health and vascular optimization. In my practice, I've collaborated with thousands of men who entered my office, persuaded their loss of size and function was permanent. Most of them were incorrect. What they possessed, what you probably possess, is correctable vascular restriction, not permanent tissue loss, not irreversible damage restriction. And the protocol I employ in my practice tackles the precise mechanisms we're about to examine. I've monitored results with over 400 men who've utilized this approach. Men aged 58 to 81, average age 67. And what I've observed is that when you tackle the root cause, when you optimize the internal environment, the body reacts sometimes dramatically. But prior to providing you the complete 4-step protocol, I want to demonstrate something to you because I know you've encountered promises previously. I know you've experimented with things that didn't succeed. So let me illustrate within the next 24 hours that your vascular system remains 24-hour vascular response test responsive. Here's your initial test, and this will indicate whether your smooth muscle tissue can still dilate. When provided the appropriate internal environment tonight before bed, I want you to perform something straightforward. Dissolve 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And this is crucial. It must be aluminum-free baking soda in 8 Oz of water. Stir it until it's fully dissolved, then consume it. That's it. That's the test. Now, when you awaken tomorrow morning, I want you to focus on your first urination. Not merely whether you go, but the quality of the stream, the pressure, the width, the trajectory. If your flow is stronger, and I mean noticeably stronger, not just marginally better, if there's fuller pressure, a wider stream, clearer trajectory, even the sound is different when it hits the water, that's your vascular system reacting. That's evidence your smooth muscle tissue can still dilate when given the right internal environment. And here's what counts: that identical smooth muscle tissue that lines your urinary tract, it also lines your erectile chambers. If it's reacting there, it's reacting everywhere. Some men also observe that their first morning urination is clearer, less cloudy. That's metabolic waste being flushed more effectively. But here's the essential part, and this is where most men halt and believe they've discovered the answer. That single dose only addresses surface level acidity. It produces a temporary shift. The deeper restriction, what's really happening inside erectile tissue, the one impacting your erectile tissue, the one that's been building for years, demands a specific sequence. One dose offers you a glimpse of what's possible. The full protocol reinstates baseline function. So, let me demonstrate precisely how this operates and why the sequence is so important. To comprehend why that single dose isn't sufficient, you need to view what's truly occurring inside your erectile tissue. At this moment, your erectile tissue consists of 3 chambers: 2 corpora that extend along the top and 1 corpus spongiosum that extends along the bottom, encircling your urethra. Consider them like sponges within a balloon. When blood flows in under pressure, those sponges engorge and expand against the outer membrane, generating rigidity and size. That's how erections function. Blood in, pressure accumulates, tissue expands. Simple hydraulics. But here's what alters after 60. 1. Those sponges begin forming scar tissue. It's termed fibrosis. Every morning, you don't awaken with a full, firm erection. And I mean a fibrosis, blood pH, and nitric oxide. Full erection, not just slight tumescence. That tissue becomes a little stiffer, a little less elastic. It's like a rubber band that's been stored in a drawer for years. The elasticity deteriorates. Now, here's the aspect your doctor probably didn't clarify, because most urologists are trained to manage symptoms, not optimize the underlying vascular environment. That scar tissue isn't the primary issue. The primary issue is the acidic environment in your blood. When your blood pH decreases, even by just 0.1 or 0.2 points, it activates something called endothelial dysfunction. That means the inner lining of your blood vessels can't generate nitric oxide efficiently. And without sufficient nitric oxide, those blood vessels remain constricted. They can't dilate completely. It's like attempting to fill a water balloon through a coffee stirrer instead of a garden hose. You can push water through, but you're never going to reach full capacity. Studies indicate that men over 60 have an average blood pH that's zero point 0.2 points more acidic than men in their 30s. That doesn't seem like much. Most doctors would state that's within normal range. But at the vascular level, particularly in the small arteries supplying your erectile tissue, it's disastrous. Your arteries in that area are already 40% narrower than they were at age 30 just from normal aging. Add acidic blood atop that narrowing, and you're operating with perhaps 30% of your original blood flow capacity, sometimes less. This is why results feel random and inconsistent. You've observed that even when you're aroused mentally, when desire is present, when you want to engage, your physical response is delayed, incomplete, or inconsistent. It's not psychological, it's hydraulic. The pipes are kinked and the water pressure is weak. And here's what generates that exasperating inconsistency you've been encountering. Your blood pH varies throughout the day based on what you consume, how hydrated you are, your stress levels, even how well you slept. On days when your body happens to be slightly more alkaline, perhaps you consumed a cleaner diet, perhaps you exercised and sweated out some metabolic acids, your medications and supplements function, your nitric oxide remains active long enough to dilate your vessels. On days when you're more acidic, it fails. And here's the aspect that generates the most frustration, the aspect that keeps men awake at night. You begin to think it's psychological. You think perhaps you're too stressed, or perhaps you're not attracted enough, or perhaps you're just too old for this to work anymore. So you add that mental layer of anxiety, which actually worsens the problem because stress elevates cortisol, which elevates systemic acidity. You wind up in a spiral. The physical issue creates psychological stress, which aggravates the physical issue. But when we adjust your blood pH from acidic to alkaline, everything transforms. Now here's where most men and regrettably most doctors misunderstand this. You've probably already experimented with arginine supplements. Maybe you're using citrulline, or even why supplements stop working. Prescription PDE5 inhibitors like sildenafil or tadalafil, and you achieve some results, maybe 60%, 70% of what you were hoping for. But then it leveled off, or the results became inconsistent. Some days it works well, other days, same dose, same circumstances, barely anything. Here's why, and this is the absent piece that alters everything. Those solutions are attempting to produce more nitric oxide. They're introducing more gas to the engine. But if your blood is acidic, that nitric oxide disintegrates within seconds of being generated. It's like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You can pour faster, but you're never going to fill the bucket. The environmental conditions are demolishing the very thing you're trying to produce. One man I collaborated with described it flawlessly. He said, "I spent $400 on supplements over 6 months. I tried arginine, citrulline, horny goatweed, even some proprietary blend from a YouTube ad, and I get maybe one good response out of every 3 attempts. It felt like my body was fighting me, like I was doing everything right but getting random results." That's precisely what was occurring. His body was generating nitric oxide from those supplements, but the acidic environment was destroying it before it could dilate his blood vessels properly. So he got occasional success when his body happened to be slightly more alkaline that day, and failure the rest of the time. And here's the vital data that clarifies everything. Nitric oxide has a half-life of 3 to 5 seconds in an acidic environment. In a nitric oxide lifespan explained alkaline environment, it endures 2 to 3 minutes. That's the difference between your blood vessels opening briefly and then closing again versus remaining dilated long enough for blood to fill the erectile chambers completely. That's the difference between partial engorgement and full capacity. The other trap men encounter is topical creams and gels. They promise increased size, better blood flow, improved performance, and some of them do produce temporary surface level vasodilation. You apply them, and for 20, maybe 30 minutes, there's increased warmth, maybe some visual plumping, but they don't tackle the systemic acidity. They don't alter your internal environment. So you get a brief period of improved appearance and then it's vanished. You're not resolving the root cause. You're concealing the symptom. It's like applying a fresh coat of paint on a house with a cracked foundation. The genuine issue, the issue that explains why nothing has provided you consistent lasting results, is that your body's internal environment is antagonistic to vascular expansion. And this is precisely why I want you to press that subscribe button right now. The information I'm about to provide you only functions if you comprehend the sequence and the timing. If you miss the follow-up content I'm releasing next week, where I detail the 3 foods that either amplify or completely demolish this protocol, you'll achieve partial results and think it doesn't work. You'll adhere to steps 1 through 4. Wonder why you're only witnessing 50% improvement, and the answer will be positioned on your plate at breakfast. Subscribe now so you don't overlook the complete system. So here's the protocol that alters everything, but you must follow it in sequence because each step constructs on the previous. If you leap ahead, if you omit steps, you'll achieve maybe 40% results and question why it's not functioning. If you adhere to all 4 steps in sequence, you're examining maximum vascular capacity for your current physiology. The bicarbonate protocol has Step 1, Morning Alkalinity Protocol. 4 steps, each one unlocks the subsequent. Step 1, the Morning Alkalizer. This is your foundation week. This is where we adjust your baseline blood pH from acidic to alkaline. First thing in the morning, and I mean first thing before coffee, before breakfast, before you check your phone, here's what you do. 1/4 teaspoon of aluminum-free baking soda. This is crucial. It must be aluminum-free. You can locate this at any grocery store. Bob's Red Mill produces 1. Arm & Hammer produces an aluminum-free version. Dissolve it in 8 Oz filtered water. Now, incorporate half a fresh lemon squeezed, not lemon juice from a bottle. Fresh lemon. Stir until the baking soda is entirely dissolved. Then consume it. This generates an immediate pH shift in your blood. The baking soda supplies the alkaline buffer, and the lemon, despite being acidic in the fruit, generates an alkaline ash when metabolized. Within 30 minutes of consuming this, your systemic acidity decreases. Your blood pH shifts toward alkaline. But this is merely the foundation. You're clearing the soil. What you'll observe in the first 48 hours, and this is your first concrete feedback that it's functioning, is your morning urination is stronger. Not just marginally better, noticeably stronger, fuller pressure, wider stream. The sound is different when it hits the water. That's your smooth muscle tissue in the urinary tract responding to the alkaline environment. That same smooth muscle tissue lines your erectile chambers. If it's responding there, it's responding everywhere. Some men also observe that first signs it's working. Their first morning urination is clearer, less cloudy. That's metabolic waste being flushed more effectively. Step 2, the nitric oxide window. Notice we don't commence this on day 1. We wait until day 5 because we require your baseline pH shifted first. Once your baseline pH is shifted, now your nitric oxide boosters actually function. Take your L-citrulline or L-arginine. 500 milliliters of citrulline is the optimal dose. You can locate this at any supplement store or online. Take it 30 minutes after your morning bicarbonate drink. Step 2. Nitric oxide timing. Why the timing matters, and this is essential. Nitric oxide has a half-life of 3 to 5 seconds in an acidic environment. In an alkaline environment, it lasts 2 to 3 minutes. That's the difference between your blood vessels opening briefly and then closing again versus remaining dilated long enough for blood to fill the erectile chambers completely. That's the difference between partial engorgement and full capacity. But here's where most men halt, and that's the error. They reach week 2, they observe some improvement in firmness. Perhaps they're attaining 70% or 80% of what they desire, and they think good enough. But even with good nitric oxide activity, if the tissue itself is fibrotic, if it's lost elasticity, you encounter a ceiling. The blood wants to flow in, but the tissue can't expand to accommodate it. So we proceed to step 3. Step 3, the tissue soak. Days 10 through 20. This is the external protocol, and this is where you tackle the fibrotic tissue directly 3. Step 3, tissue restoration soak. Times per week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, works well. 15 minutes each session. Here's what you do. Take a shallow basin, something you can comfortably sit in or position yourself over. Fill it with warm water, not hot, warm, about the temperature of a comfortable bath. Add 2 tablespoons of baking soda. Stir until dissolved. Then soak for 15 minutes. What this does is generate localized tissue alkalinity. The osmotic pressure, and this is basic chemistry, pulls metabolic waste out of the tissue and into the water. The fibrotic tissue, which has been stiff and non-elastic, starts to soften. It becomes more pliable. What this feels like, and this is the feedback you're seeking, within the first week of soaking, you'll observe the tissue appears healthier. The skin tone improves, less discolored, less of that aged, thinned appearance. When relaxed, it appears fuller, less shrunken. That's improved microcirculation. The tiny blood vessels under the skin are dilating. Blood is accessing tissue that's been starved. One man described it as it stopped looking retired. Another said, I looked down and thought, I remember this. This is what it used to look like. Step 4, the consistency protocol. Day 21 and beyond. Starting at day 21 and continuing forward, this is where you secure permanent gains. 5 days on, 2 days off. You consume the morning bicarbonate drink, Monday through Friday, then skip Saturday and Sunday. That pulsing pattern prevents your body from adapting and reducing its own alkaline buffer production. Your kidneys. Step 4. Locking in long-term results. Produce bicarbonate naturally. If you provide them external bicarbonate every single day without a break, they get lazy. They stop producing as much. Think of it like resistance training. You stress the system, then you rest it, then it adapts stronger. By week 3, most men report that their baseline flaccid size is visibly larger. Not because tissue grew. Tissue doesn't grow in 3 weeks, but because it no longer resides in a chronically constricted state. The blood vessels that were narrowed are now dilated. The tissue that was dehydrated and compressed is now properly perfused. By week 4, erectile firmness improves. The engorgement is fuller, faster, and lasts longer. You attain peak firmness in 2 to 3 minutes instead of 10 to 15 minutes. That's the 4-step protocol. Foundation, alkalinity, nitric oxide activation, tissue restoration, and long-term consistency. But there are 2 accelerators that can elevate your results from good to exceptional. There's one variable that either amplifies or protein timing mistake most men make. Sabotages everything we just covered. And most men get this wrong every single day without realizing it. It's your dietary acid load, specifically your animal protein timing. Here's what occurs at the metabolic level. When you consume a high protein meal, 8 oz of steak, chicken breast, 3 eggs, your body generates metabolic acids as it breaks down those amino acids. Specifically, it generates sulfuric acid and phosphoric acid. For about 3 to 4 hours after that meal, your blood pH drops. You shift from alkaline back to acidic. During that window, even if you took your morning bicarbonate, you're back in an acidic state. Your nitric oxide breaks down again. Your vessels constrict again. So if you're consuming your bicarbonate at 7 a.m., but then having bacon and eggs for breakfast at 7:30, you just neutralized your entire protocol. You reverse the pH shift within 30 minutes. The solution is straightforward, but it demands a shift in how you organize your day. Time your animal protein intake for later in the day. Your morning should be alkaline dominant. Fruits like berries or melons, oats, plant-based proteins like almond butter, or a plant protein smoothie. Save your steak or chicken for dinner 6 more p.m. or later. Why? Because nighttime is when your body performs its deepest cellular repair. During REM sleep, growth hormone is released, damaged tissue is repaired. You want your blood alkaline during sleep for maximum vascular regeneration. Here's the second accelerator. Beetroot powder. Beetroot nitric oxide boost. 1 tablespoon in the afternoon around 3 to 4 p.m. Mix it in water or in a smoothie. However you can tolerate it. Beets are naturally high in dietary nitrates, which your body converts to nitric oxide, but they only convert efficiently in an alkaline environment. If you take beet powder in an acidic state, you get maybe 20% conversion. In an alkaline state, you get 70% to 80% conversion. If you've been adhering to the bicarbonate protocol all day, your afternoon blood pH is optimal for nitrate conversion. That provides you a secondary nitric oxide spike. Right when most men experience their afternoon energy dip, it's also timed perfectly for evening intimacy. The men who incorporate these 2 accelerators, protein timing and afternoon beats, report results that are 40% to 50% better than the base protocol alone. They're not just restoring baseline function, they're optimizing beyond what they remember having.